Testing. Mic check, testing. Alrighty then, so I've got this headphone thing, jacky jammy joint here in my back pocket. Hopefully this does not create additional noises and disturbances. I will move this over here. I'm going to put this tablet over here. And I will get this out of the way. I don't think I need all of these excessive tools and accessories. I have no idea if I'm in focus nor in center of camera. I have no idea of checking any of these things to see if the audio is recording. What I do know is that the New Wave logo is in some sort of is in frame. And you know what, before I go any further, let's do a clap check so that I can sync the Zoom H1E for essential handy handheld recording device to the iPhone 12 Pro, and action. So you're probably wondering today what we're here to discuss. I will keep this short, sweet, and brief as best as I can. If you know me, I cannot really tell a lie. I have a very difficult time speaking on one subject without divulging into other subjects, as they are all correlated and as we are all on this planet in some form or fashion to help each other, right? And to learn from each other, work with each other, grow with each other. What I have here is a pair of Ilia Savosin Kaltik frames. If you can see from this picture on the tablet, these are the green frames. They retail, I think, approximately, and the touchscreen does not want to work. Of course, nothing is functioning, which is the recap of this story. But ultimately, we are a non-profit entity. We are known as New York Skate Association Incorporated. We are a 501c3 company. We do accept donations. The shop and YouTube are all a creation out of a desperate need to generate income without simply asking for a handout. So instead of asking for a handout so that we can continue our sort of philanthropic initiatives, we are saying, hey, why don't we do product reviews? Why don't we create a skate shop? Why don't I take a lot of the income and money that I've earned through architecture and other initiatives that I have, done personally, and put that money back into skating, where my true heart and true passion lies. So all that being said, I wish I could say to you things are great and amazing, but for the first time in my life, I have experienced a tumultuous, enough of a snow avalanche of events, or snowball avalanching of events, to the point where I could finally say with confidence that I know what it is to be suicidal. Today is April the 12th, 2024. The last video that I posted was filmed on Monday the 8th, 2024. And shortly after posting that video, I was approached by an individual who essentially I felt threatened by, and I was forced to react in self-defense. One of the reasons why my right fist is injured. Prior to that incident, there was also another altercation in which I felt my life was threatened. And again, I acted in self-defense, proactive self-defense. And the story goes that Monday around 4:45 up until Wednesday, maybe 7 p.m., I have spent the time in police custody, both in Queens, Manhattan, and the Bronx. So essentially I have 2 pending aggravated assault charges against me, and each of those cases had somehow caused me to go between the boroughs, to go through the entire Queens borough booking process to see a judge, only to be told that I'm, because I got arrested in Roosevelt Island is part of Manhattan. So then to get transported all the way to Manhattan to go through their booking process. And just as I was released on my own recognizance, or ROR, I was then told I have a pending case in the Bronx in which I assaulted an individual, and I had to then be transported to a Bronx precinct. as I waited in the tombs of Manhattan, and finally get through the Bronx processing, only to be released Wednesday, 7 p.m.-ish, then make my way all the way back to Astoria, Queens, where I could pick up my skates, my belongings, and hopefully get some sense of reality, or get back to some sense of reality, right? So that's why I'm shooting this Kaltik frame review, and I'm sharing all of that because I desperately need the support, the help, the financial help, the monetary help, the legal help, the advice help. So as we're filming this right now, I don't know how much life this iPhone 12 has, but my phone essentially was smashed in the process of the aggravated assault that took place on Roosevelt Island on Monday between the hours of 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. roughly. So all that being said, I genuinely love aggressive inline roller skating. It is the one thing that has given me some sense of belonging, but more than that, it has given me a sense of pride and community, where I've always been well off in a sense, right? I've not necessarily been in poverty or in dire need of help. But because of my experience and my background in architecture, my background as an EMT, I've always had connections with fire department, EMS, and in general, I think people have always looked out. I would say the big caveat that really came crashing down, I think that made my world, that turned my world upside down, if you will, is that I got heavily involved in cocaine use and alcohol use, and probably from 2009, I want to say roughly maybe 2010 or 11. I think 2009 and 10 I got laid off, and even then I had not even touched cocaine then. I want to say probably when I got rehired into the commercial real estate firm, maybe 2011, up until, honestly, honest to God, up until 2023, and a lot of this turmoil that has then brought me to this point of being one very homicidal, I should say, and then two, suicidal by default. If you can think of people who commit suicide by police, they're not ballsy enough to do it themselves, or jump in a river with their skates on, or a lake, or a big body of water. They're not ballsy enough to jump in front of a train and kill themselves and just say, fuck it, I'm gonna hug the third rail. These are people who, to me, in some respect, are cowards, and they're ready for someone else to kill them. So they go out of their way to force suicide by police or suicide by someone else, right? So my background as an EMT and all these other things has put me in a position where I've never really relied on anyone, so to speak, but I've always been willing to reach out and give back to the community. New York Skate Association Incorporated, 501(c). You can find us on PayPal, you can find us on Venmo, you can find us on CASHAPP. I don't have a GoFundMe, and I don't plan to do any of those fundraising sites because I find too often they take a percentage and a cut, and I'd much rather your funds go directly to support the channel and to support the things I believe in. One of those things is healthcare, and basically knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of self and the community, so that anyone who decides to put on a pair of aggressive inline roller skates, or even roller skates, gets deep insight from someone like myself who has 20 plus years getting injured, and someone who understands not just the athletic aspect of injury, but also understands the medical aspect of injury and what it is to be a first responder. So without further ado, I'm going to jump right into the Kaltik frames, and simply say these were sent to me. I want to say I only paid for shipping, if that makes sense, because again, I was struggling, and they were kind enough to send me these frames. Connor Manuela, if that's how his name's pronounced, Slangafoil Colin. I digress once again, because I have spent almost 5 years out of my life with an Irish woman who is from Dublin 13, Emma Bruin to be exact. And I say these things and I share these names because it's such a small world. That is the longest relationship I have ever been in with a woman, or anyone, an intimate sexual relationship, if you will. We discussed having children. So it's very important to me that I review these Ilia Savosin frames with some justice. But today we're just really doing an unbagging / unboxing, right? This is the packing slip that came with the frames. This photograph below is my grandmother this is my paternal grandmother on my father's side, who goes by the name of Elizabeth Allen. That's Allen. Her heritage is one that goes back to the island of Montserrat in the Caribbean. Montserrat, if you know Montserrat, it's a very small island, and the population is quickly dwindling because it is a very volcanic island, if that is even a term. But essentially, Montserrat experiences volcanic eruptions very regularly. And the history that I understand through my brother and through others is that my grandmother migrated from Montserrat to Trinidad, and potentially based on the status, based on the history and the records available, her family would have migrated from Ireland to Montserrat as a way to escape the potato famine that occurred. I don't know the exact dates of these things, but when you trace the timeline, these are the things that have occurred. Now, I put her picture there. I talk about Emma. We should talk about Ilia, but I don't know much about this Russian gentleman who is quite cringeworthy, if you will, and I love his skating. I think his skating right now is probably the most marketable in terms of getting a reach outside of the aggressive inline community, and I think that's something else that is lacking in our community, is that too often we're marketing products to each other. I'm a rollerblader, I'm a rollerblader, I'm an inline skater, blader, whatever. Again, I still do think it's better to say aggressive inline roller skating, because we're acknowledging our roots. In a sense where you can say American or African, I'm acknowledging my roots, right? But my roots are not just Africa nor America. It's Trinidad, it's Ireland, it's India, it's Bangladesh, it's Iran, so all of these things play into it, right? But here we have the Ilia Savosin. If you can see the Kaltik logo, I purposely removed the Kaltik sticker on that side, and I also purposely removed it from this side, purposely kept it on here, and purposely kept it here, so you can see. But I think it's very interesting to just give you a view of these frames. They have a very space age look and design. They also have a very space age look and feel to them. I believe when I first saw these frames, I myself was actually cringing at just how odd they looked, or how out of this world and alien-esque they looked, right? Food for thought, green. If you know me, green and red are two of my ultimate favorite colors, and then anything kind of within those realms, right? So as you can see, to me, this, you might see this as pink or some sort of pinkish hue, but in reality, to me, I see this as just another version of red. I love all of the shades of red, and I love all of the shades of green, right? So these are the frames. They come with a bag of tools and hardware. This is only half of the tools and hardware. I have the rest in this container, right? Just to give you some context. It's not much else here to talk about. That is the packing slip again. But I did do some measurements and some comparison of the frames to give you some idea. So these frames come in two sizes. They come in either a small, medium, or they come in a medium large. So what that tells me is that if you're in one of those odd shaped boot sizes, maybe you're an 8, 9, let's say maybe you're a 9, 10, you might, depending on your skate, you might be able to wear the small medium and or the medium large. The small medium, let's see here. So these frames are they are lubricated nylon injected, just an FYI, lubricated nylon injected. Okay, and again, I have the medium large. I do not have the small medium, so I cannot give you the specs on those. At least you can find them online if they're available, but I'm only giving you what I pulled from the internet and also what I was able to measure directly. So the Ilia Savosin flat frames weigh approximately, in the medium large size, weigh approximately 235 grams without the bolts and hardware. And to give you an understanding of how that compares to, let's say, the large ground control 4 frames, that would be these. So to give you an idea, and if you even compare them let's see here. You can see that they're just shy of the wheelbase. You're talking maybe a few millimeters here, maybe a few millimeters there. But since I have measurements, wheelbase is 258 on these frames, whereas on the ground control large, it's 270. So the medium large frames on the Kaltik flats are actually closer in wheelbase to the medium ground controls, which is 257. So if you were riding a medium ground control, Featherlight 4 flat frame, the large would be your best bet. So I guess you can say that ground control has 3 sizes, which is small, medium, and large. And maybe I can say, you know, maybe I can go on a limb and say that the Kaltik frames technically are a small and a medium, right? But they've engineered it just precise where it can fit, it can work with a large skate, and it can also work with a small skate. So when I look at this, I go, you know what? This is a decent wheelbase. It means that right now these wheels on the ground controls are poking out beyond the boot, right, in both front and rear. And what it means is that with a large Kaltik frames, it means that my wheels are going to lay directly below the boot. Now, why would that matter? So my opinion from skating these and skating other frames is that when your wheels are protruding beyond the boot in both front and rear, again, you have that ski slope slalom field where you're carving. You have a lot more control, I guess, if you will, in terms of managing carving when you're speeding downhill. But if you're not speeding and carving downhill, it kind of gets in the way. If you're jumping and grinding, I think that is problematic. And I have noticed that firsthand, that with the longer wheelbase, I often get clipped and caught up when I'm jumping on things and when I'm trying to make, I guess the word I'm looking for, when I'm trying to be more agile on the skates, if that makes sense. When you're jumping, grinding, twisting, turning, think of wizard frames and as like skis and surfing. So think of anything that protrudes beyond the boot as veering into that wizard realm of ski slope slalom, if you will. So that being said, I'm already thinking these might be a good addition to try on my Howards, also because of the green color, and they just might suit them very well. So that's the wheelbase. What else can I tell you about these frames? So the weight is 235 grams. These large frames are approximately 252 grams, right? Geez, I don't have a measurement for the small ground controls. But I'll tell you this much, right? In my ground control video, I talked about how the Featherlight 4 frames technically are not Featherlight at all. So this is some good insight and good intel, right? So the small ground control Featherlight 4 frame without bolts and hardware weighs approximately 242 grams. The Ilia Savosin medium large frame weighs approximately 235. So this frame weighs approximately 7 grams lighter than the ground control Featherlight 4 in the smallest size, right? So that's a huge weight difference, and I believe a lot of that difference in weight has to do with the awesome space-aged, almost astronomical NASA space design. When I look at these openings here, I see a frame that is very well designed, right? And I love that they have eliminated a lot of the wall friction, the frame wall friction, simply by going in and out, almost like a Coke bottle, if you will, right? When they say, damn, she's shaped like a Coke bottle, you know what we're talking about, right? If you can see this profile, it's quite an interesting profile and very, very unique. I've yet to come across another product that has maximized the amount of frame and minimized the weight while also minimizing the points of contact in which the frame is actually touching the grindable surface, right? Because the more you're touching, is the more friction you're going to have. So we want less contact, which is interesting, right? It's a very interesting concept, but I think ultimately when I first pulled these out of the bag, when they arrived a month or so ago, I was like, my face lit up as someone who has a background in architecture and design. And I genuinely fell in love with it. And I should also note, right, I'm mentioning my grandmother who passed in Trinidad at 101, and I'm sharing these things to give you context of why something like this matters to me, not just in the skate community, but why it matters to me beyond the skate community, and why I will probably hang on to these after they're worn down. Studying architecture, I was blessed with an opportunity at New York City Technical College, or New York City College of Technology, I think, as it was switched and rebranded many moons ago. I was gifted a project where I had to design a bike kiosk or something of the nature anywhere in the world. Now, growing up in Trinidad and growing up with my grandmother and, you know, my father, my last name is Taylor, and just other things of that nature, I've always had a fascination with the Irish. And I think part of it is because of their accent and maybe how close their accent is to the Jamaican accent. And growing up in Trinidad, and I think growing up in Trinidad is very similar to growing up in any of the Afro-Caribbean countries, where Jamaican music, specifically reggae, is something that it's honestly one of the mainstream sources of music. Each of the islands has their own traditional type of music, but reggae, which I guess originated in Jamaica, is one of the main types of music. So the Irish accent is something that has always fascinated me, as well as just looking at my grandmother and going, and then hearing, you know, that her heritage, that we might have some history in Ireland, or hearing that we have Irish history. But when I do my DNA test, I think less than 2 or less than 1% shows up as Irish. I think it actually shows up as Scottish, you know, and I think that's the Taylor aspect. But either way, I say that because I was gifted this opportunity to design a bike kiosk, and I chose Ireland. Now, this is many moons before I met the woman who I, you know, spent 5 years with, and I say that because the word LOVE, right? So obviously, I have some sort of love with the Irish culture and the Irish people. I also love my Trinidadian people and my Trinidadian culture, right? Trini, sick thing na boy. But I say that because this woman, Emma, had asked me within a few weeks of us dating if I loved her or if I was in love with her. And I think her exact words were, "Do you love me or are you in love with me?" And she was older than I was at the time. I might have been 23, you know, maybe I just lost my virginity at 22, so I was still fucking wet behind the ears trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And I remember thinking about it and then going, "I love you," and probably just responded because I was afraid to lose her, because I had just gotten her. And I could go deeper into the story, but I don't want to digress too far, right? We're here to talk about the frames, but I think it's so important because I told a woman recently, maybe I whispered it under my breath and maybe I should have spoken up more, but I told her directly to her face, "I love you." And she almost ran away and confided in her, whatever her, you know, I don't know what you want to call it, whatever her, this other gentleman that I guess was her caretaker, but whatever the case is, I'm sharing that because maybe I should have said, "I'm in love with you," because I don't think "I love" was the correct term. Like, I genuinely was head over heels, insanely mad, and definitely still am to a large extent about this woman. Like, when I say love, I don't think I can really put it into context how I really feel. I don't think I can. I think I can only show it and demonstrate it. And because I'm not familiar with this feeling of love and affection for another human being, that is, I shall say, I became very regressive and then ultimately very violent, very destructive, internally and externally. And I'm coming out of that hump, and I'm glad I am, because part of that healing process was also to be more truthful and open and honest with others. It's one of the reasons why I'm able to sit in front of you now and tell you that I am struggling mentally, physically, and most importantly, financially. because I am genuinely in love with aggressive inline roller skating, right? If that makes any sense to you. I don't love it. I think love is a word that when we use that, it means unconditional, right? Nothing changes it. If skating broke my arm, skating has broken my urethra. I'm due for my 5th or 4th surgery in a week or 2 to repair my urethra. But I can say I love aggressive inline roller skating, but the truth is that I am in love with it. I don't love it, I am in love with it. In that same fashion that I am in love with this woman. And it sucks and it's sad to say that, because it also means that I have to admit that I'm very vulnerable and extremely terrified I'm extremely terrified for what lies beyond and what may come next. But I'm hopeful that knowing that love will give me the courage and strength to give that same love to someone else, wherever they may be or however we may cross paths, right? So definitely can't wait to get these onto the frames and try them and give you guys a more in-depth review. When you come to New Wave Skate, keep in mind that you're really, truly coming to New York Skate Association. And this is just the New Wave New York Mets and New York Yankees mixed with a lot of Caribbean trident, ship, because the Caribbean islands are all about sea transportation and shipping and cargo. So a lot of that influence is about the waters. And I've always believed that the waters are more important than anything, right? There's a theory that most of the water on Earth today that even exists in our human bodies originated in Jupiter. And Jupiter, if you ever look up at the sky, if you're fortunate enough to have an Android phone or an Android device, you can download the Google Sky Map. It is free to use. And the Google Sky Map, if you use it frequently, you will know and come to realize that Jupiter is the largest star visible to the human eye at any given point in the day or night. Obviously the moon and the sun are large, but I hear people talk about things, and I hear rappers again. I'm fucking fed up with these dumb rappers that say something about, as far as I know, my history recollection, you prove me wrong, but the North Star is something that does not exist in our world and has not existed for if not millennia, right? But Jupiter, however, is ever present, omnipresent, if you will. So that's Jupiter, that's water. Now the other catch, and I'll just dive into this briefly, is that the Earth's crust, inside the Earth, there is water as well, that we have yet to determine where it's come from. So that's just some food for thought. Studies have shown and proven almost to a T that the majority of water on planet Earth that exists today in 2024, April 12th, came from Jupiter or has some origin history to Jupiter. So just let that sink in as you think about the things and people that you love and or are in love with, right? So Kaltik frames, medium large. They weigh less than the lightest Featherlight 4 frames. The largest Kaltik frame weighs less than the lightest Featherlight 4 frame. Keep that in perspective. And let me just make sure that the hardware and bolts are as well. Yep, the hardware and bolts actually do not. So the hardware and bolts actually measure close to 77 grams, whereas the ground control axles and bolts measure approximately 73. So that's a difference of about 4, right? I'm rounding up here, so just bear with me. So 70, let's say 78 versus 74, so a difference of 4 grams. And if this was 235, plus 4 is 239. So technically still lighter than the large Kaltik flat frames, right? These are designed to ride flat. They're known as the flat frames. Are still lighter than the lightest Featherlight ground control 4 frames. That's my story. I'm sticking to it and I'm not changing it. Okay, let's see here. Wheel size, I found that you can fit a maximum of 61 millimeter on the exterior. The wheel well width, which is, what is the wheel well width? I believe the wheel well width, right, these are some dead wheels. I believe the wheel well width is this. You see how easy these go in and out? That's something, not to throw shade, but this right here that I'm doing is not something you can do with a pair of, let's say, Crete Originals, for obvious reasons. Wheel well width, the overall length of the frame. Okay, so the overall length of the frame, which is where my fingers are, the overall length of this Kaltik frame is approximately 288 millimeters as compared to a ground control Featherlight 4 large frame that comes in at 300 milliliters and millimeters, I'm sorry. And if you wanted to compare it to Create Originals, your Create Originals, let me just circle this so my eyes don't lose track here. So we've got 288, and on the ground control Featherlight 4 large, you've got almost 300. And on the Create Original frames, on the Create Originals has two sizes, 1 and 2. So on the 2 of the Create Originals, you have 292. So Create Originals at their larger size is slightly larger than these, but then the ground control Featherlight 4s beats all of those with probably one of the longest frame length. The frame width is approximately, you know, that's this point to this point. That frame width is approximately 41. You know, I'll use this caliper. I'm not showing you the exact measurements, but I just want you to demonstrate. So this distance is approximately, Kaltik, it's approximately 42 in most areas, whereas on the ground control Featherlight 4s, it's about 41. Not a huge difference. The Create Original frames, however, is a 46 millimeter frame, which means the Create, if this is your Kaltik, the Create, if this is your Kaltik, ground control 4s are about the same, but the Creates are even wider for some reason. I think Creates have a thicker walls. I might be wrong there. Let me see. The frame walls for Kaltiks, these come in at a, you know, they are curved and they're very odd. They were very difficult to measure because of this weird curving space age design. But the Kaltik frames are coming in at approximately 7 millimeters for the frame wall. And I have two measurements. I have 7 and then I have 8.5. 8.5 is the upper wall. So 8.5 would be this. Okay, so 7 would be the bottom, right? 8.5 would be the upper, if that makes sense. So 8.5, 7. And comparing that to the ground control, on the ground control you have, let's say you have 9 millimeter thickness at the lowest point, and on the upper you have almost 6 millimeter. And if I were to compare that to a Create Originals, on the Create Originals you have about the same. You have 9 and 5. Ground control 9 and 6. Yeah, it's very thick up top. And these you have 7 down at the bottom, 8.5 at the top. 7, 8.5. Just some food for thought. Wheel to frame base, what is that? So I think the wheel to frame base is the distance, the center line distance from the wheel to the very base of the frame. These are very tiny measurements, but they play a factor in the size of the wheel, how big it is. They play a factor in things like when you're angled on a grind. They play a factor in how much wear the edges have. So I have these measurements. That measurement for the Kaltik frame is approximately 10 millimeters. So there's very little room at the bottom here between, so it's 10 millimeters from what looks like center to the bottom, whereas Create and ground controls have 14. So I think to me, what that tells me is that I have a longer lifespan for the frame walls, especially when grinding ledges and doing lots of tricks like royales and things that's like cess slides, things that wear down the base of the frame. it tells me that I should also be concerned about the base wearing down. And on that note, I'm actually going to take a look at the Kaltik hardware because I'm curious, right? So this is one of their spacers. I don't know if you got a good look at it, but again, I don't know just how much of this is getting recorded and if it's getting recorded properly, because I'm in dire need of a new computer, new cell phone, new recording equipment, you name it. Beans, greens, tomatoes, potatoes, yams, hams. I need it. I need it. I need it. I need it. It's one of the reasons why I'm also producing a lot of music. You know, I think I had gotten to a point where I was so emotionally distraught with no one to speak to, no one to reach out to, and talking to yourself just didn't do justice. But what worked for me, and maybe this works for you, is poetry, in motion, rhyming, spitting, getting that anger out, getting that pain out, actually crying, like bawling my eyes out. And it all started with a Cosmic song, right? For those of you who are familiar with Cosmic, rest in peace, Brian Scott Jr. During his passing, he was tragically killed in 2009, I want to say. But his death was one where, when I arrived on the scene in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, I was approached by everyone, almost like I was the spokesperson of New York, so to speak. News reporters, camera crews, other skaters, everyone came up to me. Just people in the hood, what's up, what happened, you know. There was other skaters there, but I was the one taking the initiative. I put my ground control, I think, Genesis 6s down, and, you know, dedicated those to that memorial, that makeshift memorial. We put candles, we cut out cardboard boxes. We did whatever we could to let people know this is what's up, sign your name. And throughout that process, you know, hours went by, and obviously there was another person in the altercation with Cosmic, with Brian Scott. And this individual approached me almost like a friendly ghost, if you will. And if you know me, I ain't afraid of no ghost. So this gentleman came up to me, hand kind of looking like my hand's looking right now, but with a sling and a cast, and like on, you know, one of these. I'm gonna just reenact real quick. Yo, how you doing, bro? What's up, man? That was your man's? That was your boy? Yo, forgive me, man. I feel you. I'm sorry for your loss, bro, but I was right there with them, man. Now, this is Adonis's expression. The fuck? Like, I'm looking at him up and down now, because now I see his arm's injured. Now I'm going, nigga, you... So time frame, I'm processing everything. Mind you, I'm an EMT at this point, 09. I was an EMT from 04 to 07. Everything's going through my head. I'm racing. There's a fucking puddle of blood inside of this chicken spot, right? I'm trying to hold back all the tears, the anger, the pain, the confusion, the grief, the sorrow, the remorse for the fact that I didn't do more for him as a leader in the community when I could have, not knowing that this is the reality that he lived with. And I just remember stepping back and looking at this guy and saying to myself, yo, like, we can't really be having this open conversation right here in front of the memorial. So we sort of sidestep a little bit, and I was just like, huh? And then he basically broke down a lot of his story to me that I had really kept inside for a very long time. And just talking about it, talking about it brings back some really painful memories. So if you will, you can go to SoundCloud and you can listen to most of my thoughts on just basically a firsthand account of what I was told. So I kind of paint the picture from the perspective of this, of the perp's target, right? So the gunman who shot into this restaurant, this tiny restaurant, this chicken spot. So the gunman who's shooting into this small vicinity, this address, shot Cosmic multiple times in the back, almost assassin style, if you will. And it's hard to believe that anyone who is targeting a different individual could be so brazen to miss their intended target, and their intended target gets away with a few bullets in the arm or shoulder. And I share that with you and the world because I don't believe in coincidences, and it just doesn't seem right to me that someone could be so either sick in the head or evil or malicious, if you will, or even malevolent, whatever the word is, that they would go out of, like, if I'm mad at you and I want to kill you, I'm going to kill you, right? I'm not gonna play around and like, I'm not making mistakes, and I'm not gonna take a chance at killing someone else just to send a message so that you can live and feel, damn, that could have been me. I don't want you living in fear. I want you to know who I am. I want you to see my face. I want you to know that death is coming, right? Because I ain't afraid of no ghost. Never have, never will be. So anyways, if you wanted to support me that way, you can chime into the music. It's very conscious, it's very emotional. It might not be the best. Again, it was all recorded on the iPhone. It was mixed on the iPhone, you want to call it that. It was my first time truly producing music, hip hop music, or any vocal music of that. I have a history of playing the steel pan, I don't know what to be called, but it was the more harmonious pan. Maybe it's the alto or something. In Trinidad as a young kid, and even in America, I played almost 3+ years with my junior high school band, reading and writing sheet music in the clef and the treble clef for the clarinet, for the regular clarinet. So I do have a musical background, always have been, and I have a mother who's very musically inclined. I think she has one of the most beautiful voices out there, next to someone like, let's say, what's this woman's name? I forget her name, but check out the music. It's SoundCloud. I go by $. You might find me as ADO, right? But we're talking Kaltik frames, but again, I can't give you one side of the story without the other. I wouldn't be here doing this if everything else was sweet and if everything was candy, You might be asking, why aren't you doing architecture? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Well, such is life, right? For whatever reason, my drug addiction and my maybe bad habits, my maybe showing up late to jobs and appointments, However, that might be a result of the drug addiction and the mental health issues. A lot of those have now subsided, but what hasn't subsided is the fact that the people that I had developed long-term relationships with, and when I say people, I don't just mean small entities. I mean Silverstein, Newmark, Grubb and Ellis, CBRE, the folks at SL Green, the folks at YMCA. These are all contacts and clients that I knew, the people on the bottom in in 32BJ and local unions that were doing sweeping, mopping, cleaning, to the people that were doing the engineering, building engineering, superintendent positions, to the people who wore suits and ties in the offices that signed checks and called shots, right? So I've been all over New York. I've been all over I've been over most of Washington, D.C., working on buildings and properties where our clients included Boeing, Lockheed Martin. However, this is the fate and nature. This is the nature of the beast of doing drugs and getting involved in a life of crime. Even though I was not participating in the crime, I was an active user. And I think all of that has tarnished my name, my reputation, and what I could do in the world. But it has not completely abandoned me. I still have hope, and I still believe that I can turn things around and do great things, but I cannot do it without your support, right? I can be the best EMT, I could be the best architect, I could be the best designer, but if no one wants me to design, if no one wants me to save them, if no one wants me to touch on things, the only other outlet and choice I have is to self-express through music, through YouTube, and just through whatever other means I have. But ultimately, what's going to happen is I'm going to turn to a life of crime wherever possible. I think the only other alternative that I have not tapped into are nonprofits and other charities like the church. Maybe they would love someone like myself to come and speak, and maybe they can help put, money back in my pocket where it need be. Again, I don't believe in money per se, but this is the culture and world we live in, where money is part of the bottom dollar. So I went through the Kaltik frames. I touched on a lot of things. I think the key here, takeaway for me, Kaltik being, from Ireland being Celtic, if you will, Celtic, or, in some places Celtic, but Gaelic is ultimately the true language in Ireland. If you know anything about Ireland, they teach Gaelic in their schools, and it's a requirement that you have to learn Gaelic to some extent, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm not sure there's much more I can say. You know, if you love what I do, if you want to see more, if you're interested, you know, there's going to be other networks and channels all related to skating. The urethral injury, I would love to show you more of that process and self-catheterization. I'm not sure that I can show you on YouTube without infringing on sort of you know, nudity requirements and rules and regulations. But there's definitely going to be Pornhub and possibly OnlyFans where I demonstrate catheterization, self-catheterization. I don't intend to do a lot of raunchy pornography on these channels. I do intend to do playful, lightweight, witty things that no one does. The same way how I'm doing a sort of unbagging, unboxing of a frame, but I'm including personal life and details. I think that speaks more volumes than anything. And I would probably watch a lot more pornography if when the actor walked in and the actress walked in, they were like, yeah, you know, shit sucks and da 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 da. But if all you really care about is two people fucking, then great. I don't. Like, I want to know their backstory. I want to know, where's this guy from? Where is she from? What's her story? Oh, she grew up Catholic. Oh, her mother was abused. Like, these things matter to me. And that's why I share my story. And hopefully I can get to continue to share my story while I'm still alive and breathing on planet Earth. So, Slongafoy. I should say, actually, in honor of Emma Bruin, she got me this, and it simply says, good friends are like stars. You don't always see them, but you know they are there. And I don't recall exactly when she gave me this, but this is a genuine, real shamrock. St. Patrick introduced this little plant to Ireland in 433 AD. This wild shamrock is from the highway and byways of Ireland, a trefoil product made in Ireland. I'm not sure how true this is, but the proof is in the pudding. And that's a peace, love.